So I was looking around on the internet for things to read. It's something I do, and I use my Twitter feed to either give me fodder for sermons or just to hopefully engage myself and make me use my brain a little bit. And I was really glad that I stumbled upon and read the article that was the cover story in one of the most recent GQs. And as a side caveat, I normally don't read GQ. If you ask my wife, she would tell you, I have no style. But I'm glad that I stumbled upon this article. And there were some really, really profound things in this interview that Stephen Colbert did with GQ. And if you don't know Stephen Colbert used to have a show on Comedy Central called the Colbert Report, and he is soon to be the host of The Late Show. And so in this interview, you learn some very, very interesting things about Stephen. And probably the biggest is that he comes from a family of 11. And he is the youngest child. And when he was 10 years old, something tragic happened to his family. His father and his two closest siblings died in an airplane accident. And he was crushed. But over his life, he did not let this event make him bitter. He didn't let this event control the way that he engages with the world. And he talked about this in this article. And he explained how it was because of his mother and because of his mother's faith that he was able to deal with this loss. You know, he says that he knows lots of dead people. And he's loved lots of people that he's lost. But that there's more to the story than just letting grief control us. And he also laid out that our purpose here on earth is to know God, to love God, and to serve God. And I think that really lays out for us what the author of Ecclesiastes is getting at in this text. Now, as it is ascribed to King Solomon, Solomon at this point is laying out for us that all these things that happen in life are possible. They may not all happen to you, but under the great sun, there is the possibility of each and every one of these. A time for gathering and a time for letting loose. A time for being born and a time for dying. A time for peace and a time for war. And as this article about Stephen Colbert laid out for me, was his understanding of gratitude. He talked about how at every moment we are a volunteer. And we choose to follow one of two ways. And that way of gratitude is one that God lays out for us. And how the way of gratitude works is not that you don't feel terrible when something bad happens, but that you are still able to be grateful. To know that you have a loving God and loving others through these terrible tragedies. That you're not alone in them. And as Ecclesiastes highlights for us, a lot of these seasons come and they go. It always seems that the really high moments are a lot shorter than the low moments, doesn't it? But these too pass on. And we can face them, we can hold them in both hands at the same time, and we can honestly say, I am really grateful, but I feel awful. I am broken, but I am not bitter. I am greatly saddened, but I can find joy in the world. And as we experience all these things under the sun, as there is an opportunity for us to know great joy and to experience utter sadness and despair, God is there with us through this whole journey. And I say God is with us because through study and my understanding of our Creator, God has given the ability for all these things to happen. Our freedom in Christ allows us to experience great pain, but allows us to experience great joy. God is not pinpointing every single thing that happens to you and says, now you will lose your job. Now you will experience the death of a loved one. We don't worship a puppet master. There are no strings on me. We have a God who is with us in all of these experiences, but God does not make each good thing or bad thing happen to you. God has created the possibility for that. Because there are too many things in this world that happen to people that you cannot convince me that God would do that to a beloved child. I'm sure you can think of some of these awful, horrible things. And what kind of God is that? Now, I prefer the God who gives us that bicycle. A God who is alongside, but gives us that ability to experience the highest high and the lowest low, because with all the joy of riding that bicycle, so comes the possibility and reality of crashing. Getting that long road rash that just seems to fester and hurt. But God is with us in this. God does not kick your bicycle over. And so there is the possibility under the sun for all of these things to occur. And we go through them together. We experience maybe all of these things because the opportunity exists. And in that, the trick is to choose gratitude. To respond to God out of love, to seek out, to know God, to love God, and to serve God. Because yes, life may break us, but will we be bitter? Or will we cry out, God, I am grateful, but I still feel terrible? That's okay. As Colbert lifted up in his article, he talked about a great teacher at Second City who told him, you have to fall in love with the bomb. What that highlights is you have to love even when you're failing. So those parts where you do poorly, those parts where maybe this is the worst performance of your life, you have to love it. To be grateful for it. That's a tough thing to do. So I'm sure we've experienced things in our lives that have happened, and whether we intended them to or not, or whether we wanted to experience them or not, something could be or can be gained from those experiences. Not that they had to happen, because you can't change the past. But it's in our reaction to those things that occur to us that kind of define us. What do they say? Life is 20% action and 80% reaction. So how will we react to all the things that we'll experience under the sun, under heaven? Will we respond with bitterness? Or will we walk the path of gratitude? Remember that each step along the way, we are volunteers. But we are beloved children of God. Of a God who walks with us through our greatest joys and our utmost sorrows. Amen.